With carve-outs accounting for more M&A activity, getting carve-outs right has never been more important. Here to share practical steps for getting these deals across the finish line are Jen Finger and Chris Lingner of Baker Tilly. Jen, let's start with you. Why are carve-outs so relevant in today's M&A environment?
Carve-outs are accounting for about 20 to 30% of deals today, and depending on who you're talking to, we're anticipating even more so going forward. And really, they allow for sellers to unlock value in their portfolio by shedding potentially underperforming assets, as well as kind of optimizing their portfolio. And then for buyers, they can really potentially get some sort of bargain or unlock value by adding to their portfolios assets that really align to their thesis, as well as kind of their go-forward motivations in their portfolios. So it's really a win-win for buyers and sellers today looking to unlock value overall.
Mm-hmm. Deal makers definitely love a win-win. Chris, we're going to turn to you. Where are the points in which deal makers might get the execution of carve-outs wrong?
Thanks, Caroline. That's a good question. I would say it's usually not the deal itself that's the risk. It's going to be the execution and integration of that deal. We typically see 4 kind of pain points or pressure points during a carve-out transaction process that can add a lot of complexity and just risk for the buyer. So the first one's misalignment of deal perimeter, actually getting an understanding of what's in and what's outside of the transaction, what assets, what liabilities, et cetera. You just need to be very clear on exactly what is in, what's out, because if you have a misaligned perimeter, it can lead to an extended deal process. It could lead to retrading, et cetera. Another one is underestimating the standalone cost structure. So again, it comes down to really understanding what costs are layered into the financials you're reviewing and what costs aren't. From a back office perspective, is there IT, HR, finance function? Are all those costs embedded, and are they the right size? Is it going to support the business post-transaction to be a standalone? Another one that we typically see causing issues is poorly scoped TSAs. So we've done a ton of transactions and a few that just don't have the TSAs lined up properly for post-transaction incentives and disincentives for the seller and buyer. Can lead to a lot of issues post-transaction where you're paying for something that's not worth much, and you got to go and hire someone else to do some TSA work that you thought was covered in the initial transaction. And then finally, integration failure is a big one. Just that's something that needs to be thought about day one on a transaction when you're looking at it and thinking about, okay, how do we actually stand this thing up post-transaction? What are the concrete steps to get there? And going into the minutia of every single, the Gantt charts and understanding every step of that integration process, so you get to, at the end of the day, an operating business on a standalone basis. So all 4 of those points can add to value erosion for buyers of carve-out transactions if they're not kind of addressed systematically.
Okay, well, now we know what not to do for deal makers, but we'd like to end these conversations on some actionable tips. So I'm going to ask both of you, but Chris, let's start with you. What are some actionable ways that deal makers can get carve-outs across the finish line successfully?
Yeah, so too, kind of going back to the points I just talked about, the deal perimeter, understanding exactly what's in and what's out is critical early on in the process. You can have some flexibility and some movement of certain things. Sometimes real estate is an optional thing for buyers to include or exclude. You can have other things that might just depend on the type of buyer, whether it's a strategic buyer or a standalone PE platform that you're looking at doing. So you can show them a strategic view of the financials, or you can show a full standalone view. But getting that perimeter down and understanding like the core operations and what needs to be included is critical early in the process. Without that, you can really drag out the diligence process. I've worked on deals that drag out for months and months because the perimeter changes every month, and you got to basically start from scratch and rebuild the financials, and it just takes forever and is not a good process. You kind of put a lot of ambiguity out there for buyers, and they just don't feel confident when you're changing the perimeter. The second one is not relying on the financials at face value, because there's a lot of assumptions that go into carve-outs on what is needed post-transaction on a standalone basis. So really understanding just what is there, what's in there, what's not in there, and building it up from the bottom up. Again, for the back office stuff, for headcount, et cetera, diving in and really understanding all that and the expected cost post-transaction is critical.
And Jen, what about you? Anything to add?
Yeah, so really treating the integration as an entire plan and starting really, really early on. So including the TSA planning, like Chris mentioned, it's critical. Tying it into the system separation, day one financial planning, operational planning, and creating an entire transformation and making sure that it's successful. If, every single day on the TSA costs money. So making sure that there's that plan really early on, ideally before the transaction starts. The earlier, the better. And creating that entire plan, making sure someone owns it. And the team is fully aligned across the finish line to make sure that it's successful. Again, with those Gantt charts is really, really critical for that success.
Got it. Well, let's get those Carve-Outs done. Jen and Chris from Baker Tilly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.